New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev Robert over here.
Rev Brz right here.
And Reverend Raymont Anderson over here.
Yes. We are excited. Folks, the dear, great, and amazing Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson is with us today. You know, we see you every week because you're in our intro video there. So we see your smiling face. It's been an affirmation because I went back in the archives and realized we have been quite remiss. We haven't had you on this program since August of 2021. That's way too long.
Wow.
To go without a dose of Brother Dr. Raymont on New Thought Today. So grateful you're with us. Thank you for saying yes to today and being a part of what we're doing.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite. Anytime you want me to come to the sandbox, I'm ready.
Well, good. That's what we like to hear. So, and folks, one of the things you should know about is Reverend Dr. Raymont is launching your own teaching chapter or teaching center, I think is the new term.
Correct.
Through the Centers for Spiritual Living, he is launching his own teaching chapter center. It's called Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts. So, give us the pitch, my man. Give us that mission and vision statement. Tell us a little bit more. What is this that you're cooking up for us?
So the short answer is, because of COVID and everything that's been going on, we in New Thought, etc., everybody else is doing it as well, rethinking what does it mean to be in spiritual community? What does it mean to go to church? What does that mean? And because there are so many folks who are done with the general idea of what theology is, what religion is, etc. Like, I'm not doing that. Because the arts have always been integral in my life, I got to this point where, wait a minute. If God is all there is, because that's what we say, God is all there is, then everything that we do could be a spiritual practice when we know that, which means washing the dishes could be a form of meditation if I'm aware of it. So I said, you know what? I'm tired of playing the game. It's time to bring the theater arts, the visual arts, the musical arts, dance. Like, it's time to bring all of that in this place called the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, where we see the arts as an access point to a deeper, closer relationship with the divine. Because if that which God is creation itself, then the manner in which we engage creativity is how we, as Holmes would say, the only God that any of us would truly know is the one that we embody. How do we embody the divine creation and become creators of all of this amazing stuff? Because the way we create our lives is art. Like, that's art itself. So for us, the idea is, how do we look at all the things, culinary arts? There's a samurai maxim that says the person who has attained mastery of an art reveals it in their every action. So how do we bring the art of the tea ceremony, the art of flower arranging, like how do we bring all of that into how we live our lives through the filter of science of mind and spirit?
Oh, I love that because, and I don't know, there's a song or a version of a song that says it's all holy now.
Yep.
And so, you know, that's what popped into my head. And when we think about as they call ancient communities and first world people, they always had the concept of everything was sacred.
Yep.
Right. And so it was only when we began to separate church and state, if you will. Now I don't want to go down that path because that's a whole nother ball of wax. But right. I'm just giving the impetus of what pushed this thing off. Mm-hmm. When that got kind of separated, we were able to look at things mechanically and as a resource and not as having as much value.
Mm-hmm.
But the cornerstone of spirituality, and a lot, if not most, and I'll dare say all of the ancient indigenous cultures, song, dance, music, storytelling was the bedrock of their whole civilization.
Amen.
And we stepped away somehow.
Yep.
So
yes, somewhere in there, it's like food. At one time, we would all, as a culture, gather together as the tribe, as the people, and dine and break bread together. And then somewhere the consciousness clicked, and it was capitalism and industrialization and all that. We don't have time to eat dinner. We don't have time for this. We don't have time. And then it became fast food. And religion and spirituality did that too. It became fast food, which is 1, less nutritious. 2, there is no art in making a sorry, y'all. There is no art in making a McBurger, right? Like it's not art, but going to an Iron Chef, going to the realm of soul food.
Mm-hmm.
It's called soul food because it feeds and nourishes far more than just your belly. It's literally your soul, your family, your love, your community. I'm like, it's time to bring that back into what we do as a spiritual practice.
Well, you wake up a whole nother thing and see, I'm gonna be mad at you because you're gonna wake up all this stuff and you're gonna go home. but I lived in Australia for a little while, and one thing that they did, they kind of shopped and cooked daily.
Yeah.
They had smaller refrigerators. They had smaller cabinet space. They stored like staples, rice and beans, kind of thing that could hold. But fresh vegetables and fresh meats and things like that, fresh vegetables, it didn't go bad because they bought it and they cooked it either that day or it went for lunch the next day. But there was an artistry to it. So I got into this habit of on the way home, I would stop by, get some meat, get some flowers, get some fruit, and go home and doop. And there was a whole art and ceremony and everything about that.
Yep.
Whereas now we go to the store with a grocery cart and we got to fill it up. There's no artistry. There's no sacredness to it because I was willing to bet a certain amount of that food is thrown away. And now when you flip that to the spirituality, how much of all these practices and things we teach and talk about, just you buy them, you put them in the refrigerator or on the shelf and they go bad. So to speak.
If I had a microphone, I'm gonna have to do the ink pen. Yeah, Mike, imagine it's a microphone. Boom. Yes, exactly. Yes.
And folks, we're going to take a break to go get a snack. And here's what I know. You guys are getting me hungry, and I married a chef. So I'm with you. I'm with you on absolutely every part. And then in the middle of your share, Elsia, God whispers in my ear, oh, yeah, that's right. He just finished Ramadan.
Well, still one. I got three more days.
Yeah, 3 more days. Okay. Yeah, I knew we were close. So LZ is starting to talk about food again. That means Ramadan's almost over. We know that for truth. But I'm with you, right? It is that it's the art of being. We're bringing, we're expressing, we can express the art of being as both our spiritual practice and bringing that sacredness into the dishes or the cooking or the laundry or when I was a ski instructor, we loved the phrase chop wood, carry water, because it didn't matter how good you were or how much you knew about getting down a mountain on your skis. Some days the water gets you. Some days you have a tough time carrying the wood. But if you do what you need to do for so much, just keep doing it, keep practicing it, and make it sacred. Make it that aspect of you that is it no longer the chore, but now it's the joy.
Wax
well,
on, wax off.
Wax on, and it's like the Buddhist practice of working meditation or walking meditation.
Yep.
The whole thing becomes sacred, and so I can get just as much. And I've said this thing before. I can get just as much doing A than B. And there was this Ram Dass story that he told once. He was in the audience, and there was an old lady on the front row, and she was crocheting, and he was giving these wild, vivid examples about a psychedelic trip, right? And he would look there, and the lady was nodding her head profusely, and he'd say, "Wow, what is she?" And he'd notch it up and notch it up. He kept notching it up till he like, "Well, I got to talk to this woman. What is going on?" And she said, "Yeah, I was right there with you on everything." She says, "Because I crochet."
Right.
And all of those innuendos and intricacies can be found in anything.
Right. Right.
When it's art, when it's done artfully, when it's done with awareness. And that is just so beautiful. Right.
It's one of the things that I love about the metaphysics of the Karate Kid, because the whole idea of literally wax on, wax off, paint the fence, sand the floor, is Mr. Miyagi was teaching Daniel, when you really know what karate is, or in the new version with Jackie Chan, when you really know what Kung Fu is, everything is it. In the putting on of a jacket or the taking off of a jacket, that's Kung Fu. That is spirituality. Everything.
Yes. Yes.
Amen.
Let the church say.
So, okay, Raymont, so you're covering many of the questions that we ask most people when they come on this program. And we're just doing that without even asking any questions, which is great. You've given us a definition and some parameters around your vision for integrated arts, the spirituality of integrated arts. Help us understand some of the practices that are key here that you find adaptable or have adapted. I know you're a man of many, many, many talents in so many different ways. So I'm interested to hear a little bit more of how you're making it all happen.
So one of the main things that I encourage folks to do is, when we talk about spirituality, theology, like whatever it is, when we're talking about that, and I always poke the bear and say, so what is it that you think spirituality is, or what do you think theology is? Like, theology is the ology, the study of God. Well, that's what that's what New Thought is, the study of God, but not an anthropomorphic God, the God of our own being, the God that is the isness, allness of everything. And because it's all there is, it's you too. So theology is the study of your awareness of God as you, incarnating itself as you. Pause. Okay, so that being the case, then there's a practitioner in Asheville, Charlie Shepard, who said he would love to make a bumper sticker that says, "You are God, now act like it." So when we have this awareness, Holmes said, whatever is true about God is true about you. When we have this awareness, then I don't just have to sit on the cushion to meditate. I don't just have to do this journaling or this or this. When I really understand this, then I have the entire spectrum of the kitchen and every spice and every vegetable and I have the full spectrum of all of it available for me, that it doesn't just have to be this one spice or this one vegetable or this one starch. I have all of it. So for me, it's how I love comic books and movie. Anybody who knows, I'm wearing a Dr. Trent anyhow. For me, it's going to the movies is a spiritual practice, because I interpret the metaphysics of the movies, the television show, whatever it is. Because I do American Sign Language, that communication, commune. The connection is community. It's coming together in oneness and knowing in communication. In the beginning was the word was with God, and the word was God. So we believe our words are power. So how am I stewarding my words? That's a spiritual practice. Just engaging in this conversation is a spiritual practice, because it connects one incarnation of God with another incarnation of God and another incarnation of God and all of the incarnations who are watching. It's coming together in oneness and unity to engage in this amazing thing. Like, so it's all an opportunity for deeper awareness.
You know, we can't do this much longer because I'm gonna be wore out. Because you know, we're playing this. You know, they got that new thing going on called pickleball, where the thing is to get the vibe and the rally going. But we about in it right now. I'm just saying. But you know, you bring up this point when I go back and I think about ancient initiate systems, whether they were in a mystery system, whether it was in a rites of passage, any of those types of initiatory systems. The one couple things you said, I mean many things, but the couple I want to highlight or reemphasize is that in those systems, they were training the individuals to be what later became to be known as Renaissance people, right? They were skilled in multiple disciplines: mathematics, astronomy, astrology, science, medicine, so that they would begin to see the community, communality. I'm making up a word here, of how that stuff came together, and one hand worked together, right? So when you're steeped in that kind of understanding, as you said in the beginning, it's all holy. Then the thing becomes, now in a community, we have a group of people. When you have now they talk about group dynamics. Well, that's just the inner workings of a community, right? And they're basically saying that to get a good group dynamics, and we've tried to put it in an industrial space without the foundation. We're saying work together for the common good of all. And then you can grab Dr. King's, whether you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper you can be, because it is for the community. It is for the whole. And if I benefit, you benefit. If I suffer, you suffer. And we got to get back to that.
See, I think one of the things that we're missing just in general, because we throw out the word community often, and the people who don't really grasp it don't realize community is relationship. Community building is building relationships. Interpersonal, intrapersonal, individual and personal. Like, what kind of relationship do I have with myself? Because there are a lot of folks, like, I'm sure we could name some folks. We got some, there's some folks we could name that we know the relationship that they have with themselves is narcissistic, is codependent, is people pleasing, is get thee behind me, Satan. Like, you know it. So what kind of relationship do I have with myself? To then be able to have with another, to then have to have with the community, to then have with the practice that I'm engaged in, be it whatever it is.
Wow.
I know this won't come as a surprise to either of you gentlemen, and that whole piece starts with exactly as you're saying, me being me, me being with me having the courage to have the crucial conversations with myself. Sometimes it feels a little easier to have those tough conversations with others. You're doing this, you did that, I don't like how you're doing this, but it can. And to me, that's a huge part of the spiritual practice, is being okay enough with myself that I can tell myself where I'm mucking up. Where I can have those really deep, because it's in the seed of that where the answer lies as well, and the solution lies as well.
You know, you bring up another point for me here in this, you know, like the word authentic is just thrown around now like, you know, popcorn at the movies. And it's like, as you were saying, I'm thinking about, there's this song by Teddy Pendergrass, and there's this verse says, "Be for real." See, what I would rather you be real than to be authentic. And I know there's a play on words, but to be real to me, and I think in its essence, is to be who and what you are, because I can be authentically somebody else, right? And so, you know, that's what I love about the arts piece. And I'd love to hear how some of your ideas of how you're going to bring it forward is, if you're in an acting motif, right? You begin to play different parts, and you have to learn to separate your real self from the piece that you may be performing, so that you don't get, don't get it mixed up. And there's some cases and probably that's going on right now for real that some people are suggesting that may be what happened to in a certain case. And so I think that we have to begin to be real. If it's like the fox and the gingerbread boy being taken across the water, and he say, "I'm not going to eat you," but that's my nature. Now it's not bad or good. That's just what I do.
Right. One of the funny things is, so when I got I went to Virginia Commonwealth University to get my master's in theater education. And one of the main things that I learned that has carried over in so many other intersectional ways is the thing that makes you a more skillful or masterful theater artist, actor, actress, etc., is you have to know you well enough to be able to put on the character of something or someone else. So it forces, if you really want to be good, I gotta say Tom Cruise. Because for me, Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. No, it's Tom Cruise as a special agent. It's Tom Cruise as a samurai. It's always Tom Cruise, though. Not a Denzel Washington, where it's
right.
I don't see Denzel. I see Malcolm X. Yes. I see a crooked cop, right? So, but in order to go there, you have to have a level of transparency and realness with yourself to be able to go there, right? Like that's why I like, and I may forget his name, but Emile Zola says, if you ask me what I came to do in this world, I, an artist, will answer you. I am here to live out loud. And I love that because it's like, okay, so how do I do that? And if I'm going to be afraid of what other people think of me, I'm not going to be real. I'm going to be fake. I'm going to put on whatever mask I think they want me to put on in order for me to be the good little whatever in their realm of, no, not playing that game or playing by those rules, because that's not being real.
Yeah. And I just love that analogy of when you talked about Tom Cruise and Denzel. There's certain actors and actresses, not calling anybody out because they do what they do, but there's certain individuals who can get into a character, embody that character. Now, it's quiet as it's kept. One person for me that does that very well is Samuel L. Jackson. That character he played in Django, or the character he played in the Tarantino movie, I forget the name of it, slips of mind right now. Pulp Fiction. He embodied those. You might have thought that he had did that for real.
And I do believe he spoke to this in an interview once. I seem to remember watching an interview once where Samuel Jackson spoke to this piece that he's not him. We don't know him. He gets, and here, the point he was making was he gets confused for other Black actors.
Oh, yeah.
More often than recognized for himself. And I think that's part of it, right? He does it so masterfully that when you see him, you can't think of a name.
Right.
Other than, and I never thought about it with Tom Cruise, but yeah, now you say it, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I can't remember the character's name because you only see that one perspective. It's hard to see anything other than Tom Cruise.
Right. Like so Viola Davis in the recent when she was the queen, right? Like the warrior queen.
Yeah, warrior queen.
Versus Viola Davis in Fences. Viola Davis in
Murder. How to Get Away with Murder.
How to Get Away with Murder. Or You Is Smart. I can't think of the name of the movie, but those are 4 different women.
Right.
Yes.
Which means she has a grounding in herself so powerfully that she is able to, even in a role, quote unquote, that is a made up role, she is able to take her realness and bring it to this role and make the role, the character, just as real.
Yeah. And you just made me think about, a great physician in his own right, Dr. Carl Jung. But when we look at his whole ideas of archetypes and how an individual can channel, if you will, an archetype, and how those same archetypes manifest maybe by different names in different cultures, but the personification of it is the same.
Yep.
And so when you can be real like that, and you can allow, because that's, for me, that's like allowing the spirit to move through. And what better way to display that than in art, whether you're doing poetry or dancing or music. I mean, you look at some of these kids now with this robotic hip hop, crunking stuff going on. It's like, oh my God, that the person doesn't even look real when they can do it really well.
Exactly. Right.
All right, Z, before you start sounding old or something, we need to take a break and let our sponsors say hello. Folks, if you wonder what you've wandered into here, this is the New Thought Media Network. This is New Thought Today. Myself, my dear brother, Reverend LZ, and our special guest, Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson. Before we do go, I want to go to break, though. I want to give a shout out to Shay Bird, who added during our recent conversation there, I used to be a chameleon, now I'm my real self. Sometimes people don't like my light, but I don't take it personally. I'm grateful for the transformation. Amen, Shay Bird. That is exactly what we're talking about. Thanks for chiming in, and thanks for joining the conversation. We're going to take a real quick break, say hello to a couple of sponsors, and we'll be back in just a moment or two. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming with Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson here on New Thought Today. We'll be right back. And we're back with more of New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. That's Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson on lead guitar. Thank you for being with us here, sir, which is great, because I think that's a great way to lead into this next segment. For the longest time, yes, New Thought has had, if you will, its only real artistic taste in music. It's the obvious. It's the first. It's the obvious way to connect the spirituality and our practices and arts. However, to me, it sometimes gets overlooked a little. It's kind of the obvious example in the room, and so that's why we have New Thought Radio, because I love the music, and that's what I'd love to find out is what's your music? Where did you start with music, and what are maybe some of your favorite New Thought musical artists?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Oh Lord, why he didn't ask me that question, man? Okay, so the controversy. Did you not catch the Tom Cruise note? Like, okay, so music for me, in terms of me as being musical, has shown up via movement. Because when I started martial arts years ago, I would do forms and various movements with like the soundtrack to Star Wars or whatever as my background music. Okay. So that was my score. And, you know, growing up in a Black family, of course, there's all kind of R&B playing and stuff. And then, you know, right when the hip hop era, so there was some, you know, in there. And then, you know, years later, I get involved in American Sign Language, and at that time, I was Christian and I would interpret in church. And I would notice that while interpreting the choir or the vocalist, the deaf people would not pay attention. They would talk about, what you doing this weekend? You going to the football game? And so I got curious to know, well, why are they, like when it's music, they disconnect. And it was because, well, music is a hearing thing. It's not a deaf thing. So I got really, the nerd in me, I got really invested in changing that paradigm. And so I investigated and created, for me at that time, my form of how do I embody the music so the deaf people would be more engaged. So then became a sign language performer of music, an interpreter of music, and created a sign language performance company that did theater and music, signing and dancing, etc. So that's how, like, I don't sing, I don't play an instrument myself other than my body and the voice. In terms of New Thought musicians, I don't have a favorite. However, there are many that I like. However, what I will say is I would love to see New Thought music expand into a completely new realm that brings in young folks and people of color. That in many ways, the music that is presented now doesn't do in the way that it could.
Yeah. I would love to see some New Thought gospel, and I'm working on it.
Amen. Yeah.
Okay.
I have some ideas that I'm percolating. I have a cousin who is a world-renowned gospel teacher. He's taught in Japan and in South America, and so I've told him, just I'm ready. I'm gonna call you. Just be ready. And so I get you, because there is when you look at gospel and spiritual, and now they call it inspirational music. They got a lot of different. It's evolved as the thing evolved. But I was listening to a song yesterday by Regina Bell called "God Is Good," and it was just an old-fashioned clap your hand. I know God, my God, God is good, and it was just hand clapping,
right,
and singing in that call and response kind of way, and people off on the side saying, "Oh Lord," in the middle of all that, and when it came together, I used to play in drum circles back in the day, and it started out with one thing and somebody else came, and at first it sounded all disparate, and before you know it, it was like a groove and a whole thing going on.
Jazz improv.
Had you been there at the very beginning, you was like, you might have walked away a little right. before you got it. And that's what we, because that's inspirational. That's our lives. Our lives are disparate. And when we find the right tune, the right rhythm, the right beat, boom, it just falls in line.
Yes. And, I often think about, so if like, who's a musician, a vocalist or whatnot that younger folks, Gen Z, Gen whatever comes after Y, Z, LMNOP, like whatever, what is that? What are they listening? Who are they listening to? And you think of folks like Lady Gaga. Okay, so if Lady Gaga did New Thought music, what would it sound like? If Lil Nas did, like, what would, if LL Cool J came back and did New Thought rap, what would that sound like? Kelly Clarkson, what would that sound like today.
And you know, the interesting piece that you just brought up there is like some of the music. Well, oftentimes in New Thought music, we don't deal with tough subjects.
No, because
it's very nice. Whereas these younger people, they listen to the whole spectrum, everything from, you know, whatever to whatever. Yep. And they can still groove and identify from it and get an inspiration from it.
Yep.
And so it's like when we start cutting off parts of our lives in terms of what we want to not focus on, but at least what we want to look at or acknowledge, we begin to start cutting off limbs when we begin to ignore them, I believe.
Yes. It goes back to what you said about being real. We have to be real, and sometimes real includes grief and sadness and fear and depression, and all of those things are part of the human experience.
Boom.
Well, where are the songs that help us navigate that?
Yep.
Yes, I want to jump in here because I forget which one of you two recommended I read this book. This is The Cross and the Lynching Tree by James Cone.
Oh yeah, that was me.
And it finally got to the top of the stack. I forget how long it's been sitting there, but it finally got to the top of the stack. And right off the top, right in the first chapter, the author James Cone is pointing us to remind us, or in some ways, I think, to awaken some people, that many of the original spiritualist songs were really that push-pull between the sorrow and the pain, but also the deliverance that comes through religion. And so while the Black population of America was being persecuted and lynched, the music of their time provided them the avenue to feel, well, in the juke joint specifically, to be seen as human.
Right.
And so that music served a purpose, served a very powerful purpose that a lot of white kids with dreadlocks didn't quite understand when they were listening to it in the 80s and the 90s, thinking it, Robert Johnson was God, or the devil, whichever way you want to look at it, or however, right? So I agree, we don't quite have that. I don't think popular music has it. I would love to see more of that juxtaposition, the reality of our condition, of our human condition, parlayed in the same song with the promise of this philosophy and this powerful teaching that we call New Thought.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And you bring up James Cone, and I admire him so much, and I was in his presence a few times when I lived in New York, and I remember being at a lecture he gave at the Schomburg Library, and speaking to the realness of things, and he made a statement. He said, I think I identify more. He was doing something on Malcolm and Martin, and he said, I think I identify more with Malcolm as I've gotten older. And somebody in the audience said, well, I don't think you're a Christian. I don't think you understand. He said, well, my great-grandfather was a minister. My grandfather was a minister. My father was a minister, and I'm a minister. And he says, I think I understand what ministry and Christianity is. He says, but when I look at life in terms of a holistic point, they both had their ins and outs, if you will. He says, but when I look at what's needed for our people, and has become more highlighted, I think Malcolm had a more holistic approach. It's like you were saying earlier, you got to take the bitter with the sweet, the good with the bad. You just can't all be good, because then everything, if I put sugar on everything, everything gonna be sweet, and that's not gonna work.
Yep.
So we do have a question in our normal lineup. How do you describe or define spiritual bypass? However, I don't think we need to actually ask that question today, because we're answering it, folks, right? That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's not all roses and what did I hear? Cookies and cuddles.
Right.
Not all cookies and cuddles.
Just for the sake of the conversation, Very rarely do I even refer to spiritual bypass anymore, simply because it's possible to have a life-affirming bypass and a non-life affirming bypass.
Yes.
So I remind people, like, think of it in terms of metaphysical malpractice. A doctor, a physician, they're practicing medicine. They are doing it. They are just doing it in a very ineffective, non-life affirming way. So when we get into this thing, metaphysics and spirituality, am I practicing it in a way that is uplifting, life affirming, God affirming, love affirming, whatever those words are, relationship building, or is it causing more separation, division, divisiveness? Is it putting a rope around that branch to lynch someone's gender expression, someone's sexuality, someone's ethnicity? Because we lynch people very often with our words. We don't need rope anymore. We do it verbally and emotionally and in our relationships and our politics. Yeah. And for me, that's metaphysical malpractice.
Yeah. You forgot the AR-15s.
Yeah.
Sorry, we weren't going to talk about guns today, folks, but I'm going to blame it on Raymont. You brought us there because that's one of the places where I'm drawing drawing a line as well. For me, is the crosses but are not the readily accessible, the easily accessible access to guns and guns of mass killing, not a modern day lynching tree in some ways. And because it is the white guys at the top making the money and making sure these guns are available to those that have been traditionally oppressed in our country.
Yeah. And a question that comes to my mind, because I've seen other folks do this. When something is going on in the community, whatever it is, and it's a danger to the community, whoever they are, whether it's, folks in Hawaii, folks in the Amazon, folks in wherever, they come together and they engage in some spiritual practice that shifts the energy. There's a sweat lodge, there's a peace pipe, there's a song, there's a dance, there's a haka, there is something. Where is the connection, the collaboration, the communication where New Thought folks are saying, we're going to have a symposium where all we're going to do is sing songs, bang the drum, and pray and affirm that we are shifting the consciousness of the United States of America so the obsession and the fetishization of guns has dissolved. Why are we not doing that? Because we like to malpractice and not even engage in the conversation, because we will quickly say, show me someone who is for ... and against. So we're not supposed to protest or be against or be anti. And yet I remind folks, so you would not wear a flame-proof, an anti-flame garment if you're a firefighter. You don't use anti-stick cookware. So we cherry pick when to be for or against versus saying pause and understand that the founding fathers who wrote the Second Amendment were coming from a very particular consciousness. Yeah. Why are we still wearing the 5-year-old garment that we wore when we were in kindergarten by still wearing the 5-year-old garment of a consciousness from when? And slavery when? And women were property when? That's what wrote that document. Yeah. And we are still steeped in the consciousness of, we're still drinking the Kool-Aid of that versus saying, why do you need a gun? Why do you have a gun? For protection. Well, how do we change the consciousness so that you don't even need protection?
Well, and we spoke a little bit of that today before with a couple of incidents that happened where innocent individuals were shot for no reason, and I think that the beautiful thing about your budding ministry is creates, or not only creates, but it exemplifies coming together of differences, right? I.e., music, dance, spoken word, sign language, if you put that in. And whereas now we have created, and the pandemic helped create it, but now we've created these islands where people are rallying around in the same ideas. There's nothing new being interjected to wake up the consciousness.
Right.
And so they're spinning. And so now it's me against the world, or my group against the world. And we need the arts to bring us back together, to say it takes all of us to make a great production. And
I'm coming to that point that it was actually the arts that led the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been acceptable to have a black guy playing bass, right? No matter how white you were as a band, that was always cool. The arts have always been that melting pot that says, if your art is real, we're gonna embrace you, we're gonna respect you, we're gonna invite you in. If it isn't, however, well, that might be another story. And I think we're busting head. One of the things I see that your ministry has an opportunity to help us navigate is the coming age, or the current age now, of digital art and defining what is art.
Right.
With the proliferation of these IA image generators, you can create anything from scraps of anybody else's work, and you don't know whose work you might be taking scraps of to. So there's legal, there's ethical, there's ramifications.
Right.
And at the center of it, art has always been that vessel from which we come to know our oneness.
Right.
That we can dissolve that sense of separation.
Right.
And be vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah. In order to be in relationship, you have to be vulnerable to truly be in relationship. Vulnerability is a must. Because otherwise we're talking at each other. But the moment you communicate with another person, you have to let your guard down. You have to open up to be able to say what is really on your heart, what's really on your mind, and to receive the same thing from another person.
Our dear friend Shay is still with us and sharing a little bit more. I think there's a false belief in community. You're not supposed to talk about anything negative. Talking about or acknowledging the so-called negative thing is really the only way to shift the vibrational frequency on any given subject or social problem. How are we going to change anything without acknowledging that it is a thing? Exactly. Shay, you're welcome to come on as a guest anytime. We'd love to have you.
And that's exactly why I remind folks that we call ourselves metaphysicians, right?
Yes.
And I say, take the meta off and just look at the word physician. Whatever the physicians are, they could be cardiologists, they could be pediatricians, whatever their specialty is. They get together at conventions and they show all of the x-rays, the MRIs, the EKGs, and they talk about all of the ways that the heart can be diseased and lungs. And they talk about all of that for the purpose of what? We like enjoy. No, it's for the purpose of getting to the other side of how do we restore the patient to health and well-being. We don't do that. We completely skip the step of, well, it's all God and it's all good, period. Well, wait a minute. When my grandkids have to buy bulletproof backpacks because we never know if they're going to get shot in school, it's not all God and all good. I understand what you're saying, but let's get to the real point of, and how do we navigate this? When my mother died and people were like, well, Reverend Ray, may she rest in peace. Pause. I understand what you're saying, and I receive it with the love that you intend, but I do not believe in rest in peace. That is some Christian ideology of a heaven bygone, blah, blah, blah. There is no rest in peace. There is life after life, and life is eternal. But thank you. Oh, she's in a better place now. What better place? God is all there is, so every level of consciousness is a great place because God is all. But I understand what you're saying. Like, it's really time for us to ground this in a more earthy, grounded soulful spirituality that is real.
Yeah.
Like
that's
go ahead.
Yeah, no. And what I hear you saying, and I've heard other metaphysicians say this, is what we are trying to advocate, and what most physicians will advocate if they're trying to help remedy an ailment, is you have to change your way of life. This has to become a way of life, not something that we talk about or pontificate about only, right? We do go to the conferences and pontificate to create new innovative ideas, and we challenge each other to move it to the next level. But at the end of the day, that stuff has to be baked into a way of life, so that, as you said at the very beginning, it's all holy now. Everything is sacred now. So we look at it that way. We become antagonistic to it that way. We become cajoling to it that way. And when that happens, the beauty of the divine will just unfold like a flower during a spring day.
Right.
When we live it, when we're living it, it's living as us. It's expressing as us. Folks, we're going to need to take another quick break here and say thank you to our sponsors and our donors and all those types of folks. However, we don't want you to go away. We've got just a little bit more time to go, and we're going to come back in a moment with our final thoughts on today's conversation. If you're just joining us for the last segment, it has been a great pleasure to have Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson with us, and we're not done with him yet. So stay tuned. We'll be right back for a little bit more here on New Thought Today. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you. And we're back with our final segment here on New Thought Today, part of the New Thought Media Network. This happens every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We're very, very grateful that you're with us. All right, gentlemen, I've saved a little extra time today because I know how we all get when we're together. Trust me, folks, we'll probably be here for half an hour afterwards, just chat as well. So, but let's get into some final thoughts. Rev Z, how about for you, sir?
Ooh, I applaud the good doctor for bringing forth this idea of the arts. Because from my tradition and upbringing, the arts are spiritual. Whether it's a martial art, from the many styles I've studied, to the art of choral singing, to the art of drumming, to the art of acting. There are certain interchangeable skills. There are certain things that form and bonds a community. So I think my final thought is, let's figure out how we can make our life artful, so that we become not only the artists of our lives, but also the rendition of the artists to be displayed, if you will, to the world.
Amen.
Beautiful. Reverend Dr. Brother A. Raymont.
So I'm going to jump off first with, so the vision for the Spiritually Integrated Arts Teaching Center is we are living as an active demonstration of what it means to be united, emancipated, and supported in an equitable and just world that works for all. And we do it through the arts.
I love it.
Beautiful.
You got to live it.
I don't know. There's anything more I can say after all of that. I should have saved you for the end today, my friend. I do this to myself every week, folks. I say, and I want to say that I'm inspired. I'm inspired by what you're bringing forward, because you've been around this movement long enough. We've known about you long enough. You're bringing your, excuse the word, folks, your authentic and we'll say real self to this expression of ministry, and that's really what this network is about. It's what this program is about.
Amen.
Is celebrating that there is more than just the old way of getting to God.
Amen.
I've said it so many times. With 8 billion plus people on the planet, there's 8 billion different ways to know God, and you're bringing together a group of people and a platform, if you will, a space to really express the integration of arts and spirituality. It's a cool thing to witness. I do hope that you'll come back and be with us again.
Yes, definitely. So just keep me posted. Surgery is next week, so it might be a little bit later, but yes, definitely. Yes. Just let me know when, man. Let me know.
It was a year and a half, and that was a little too long.
Yes, let's not wait that long.
And folks, if you'd like to catch our previous interview with Reverend Dr. Raymont, it's on YouTube. I'm going to run the banner there. We'll let you know. And I'm going to drop it into the chat box as well, so it'll be a live link. Invite you to head on over to YouTube and check out that interview from back in August of 2021 with Reverend Dr. Raymont. It was a great conversation then. And we'll definitely have you back on a lot sooner than a year and a half. I promise you that. Folks, we want to thank
I'm going to have to grab that myself. I'm sorry. I got to grab that myself just to see what we did.
Well, we've been doing this long enough. That's now started some of the show prep is to go back and remember, hey, how long's it been since this person's been with us?
Yeah.
Folks, we're going to get out of here. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network and what we're doing here. Until we see you next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.